Murdoch has the same colour as Billy and the same size as Hank. He can pull both trucks and coaches so that he'll prove himself how strong he is, like those tender engines on the Fat Controller's railway. One day the Fat Controller came to see him and said, There will always be a lot of important work for you, he said, and I know that you have worked extra hard, but 2 new engines is going to do your job while you are resting because of that hard work you've done, he said. Yes, sir, said Murdoch, and so Murdoch and the Fat Controller agreed to give the new engines a big welcome to the railway on Sodor. While Murdoch was still having a quiet moment, the 2 engines were a narrow gauge engine and a tram engine. Their names were Duncan and Toby. They were new to the railway and found out that they still have a lot to learn. Toby was impressed with the railway, but Duncan wasn't. It was because of the sheds. What a small shed, he said. This won't do at all. It will always be too much of that old shack. I think it's nice, said Toby. Grumbled Duncan. What's that big rubbish? Shh, whispered Toby. That's Murdoch. He's the strongest. Toby felt sorry for Murdoch. Sorry, Murdoch, he said. Duncan's in a grump right now, but he's still nice. And Murdoch felt sorry for Toby too, because Duncan was still in a grump. Just then the Fat Controller arrived and said this to Duncan. Now, Duncan, he said, I will get you ready for work. I'm tired, grumbled Duncan. Let Toby go. He'll love it. No, said the Fat Controller. It's your turn, not Toby's. And so Duncan puffed away. He was in a very grumpy mood. When he arrived, he found the coaches. He did not like those coaches at all. He think they were not proper coaches. Just then he spoke severely to the coaches. What's that rubbish, he said. Those aren't coaches, they're troublesome trucks. Squeaked the coaches. What a horrid engine, they said. Now then, said Duncan's driver to Duncan, get ready. And so Duncan steamed away. They finally arrived at the little station when Spencer came in. He was just in time too. Hello, said Duncan. Who are you? I'm Spencer. Who are you? I'm Duncan, said Duncan. I've heard of you. You're the Duke and Duchess's private engine. And how did you know, said Spencer. Because I've heard of you, said Duncan. Nice smart coach, he said. And those coach. Nice smart coach, he said. Thank you, he said. I thought those coaches were yours. They're just the engines, said Duncan. So, sorry, I can't stop. I must keep time, you know. Spencer was speechless while Duncan steamed away. He puffed up and down the mountains with the passenger train while he was steaming on the countryside. Here I come, said Duncan while he was steaming on the line. They stopped. They finally stopped at the other line where he finally stopped at the other line where he will take his coaches home and the passengers home too. Just then, he was uncoupled again, and then his driver would not stop on letting him have a rest before he can get the trucks. Why can't I have a rest? He said. It's because of those. Why can't I have a rest because of those coaches? He said. I want to have a rest. No, said his driver. You'll need to fetch the trucks first. Trucks, grumbled Duncan. I won't, so there. He moved a little bit, but came off the tracks. Told you, he said. Duncan wasn't hurt, so Toby came to the rescue at last. Just then, he was ready to rescue Duncan when the fat controller came in to see him. He spoke severely to him, and then he set up a new message for him. I shall see you at the sheds later, he said. Duncan was back on the rails, and so Toby had nothing to do while he was feeling a little bit bored, and so he puffed away and left the other line. Come on, said his driver, let's get you home. Later that night, Duncan came home, and then when he arrived back to see Murdoch again, the fat controller was already there. You are a very troublesome engine, he said. You can go back in the sheds if you want, but I hope this will teach you a lesson not to bully the coaches again until you next come out of the sheds, he said. Duncan has now had a bad day. He did not like it at all. It was because of the coaches, and it was because of the angry likes of him, of when he is really grumpy. He already remembered that Peter Sam. He already thought that he was making Toby enjoy this, but not at all. He crawled back into the sheds to think about what he has really done today.